How many refused the lift? All of them, Captain. Nia-Alois soon turned from the descent window with the slowness of someone hoping to be told a joke. 1. Below her, the world called Anvil rolled past in its last clean daylight. Ochre plains, a green smear of marsh along the northern coast, and this small gray grid of low harbor sitting beside a sea that would be boiling in 6 weeks. Nobody was at the landing pads. That was the first wrong thing. In 211 evacuations, Soon had never once arrived to find the pads empty. There were always crowds, always the pressure of bodies, always somebody's grandmother screaming about a box of photographs. The pads were bare, the streets were bare. And 9 kilometers north of town, at the edge of the marsh where there was nothing worth saving, 11,000 human beings were building something. Magnify, she said. Trenches, earthworks. A spoil heap the size of a small hill, and machines crawling along it, and people, hundreds of people, in lines, passing material hand to hand, like it was 900 years ago and nobody had invented a crane. They were not panicking. That was the second wrong thing, and it bothered her more than the first. Signal them again, Soon said. Tell them the second morning has capacity for the full colony population plus 12%. Tell them we can be loaded and away in 9 days. The reply came in under a minute, in flat, unhurried human speech. Appreciate it, Captain. We'll take your power. We won't take your ships. The Vaughn have one prayer, and it is short. May you leave in time. They had earned it. 900 years ago, the Vaughn homeworld had gone quiet under a dust veil, and the last ship in the yards had stayed behind to keep loading, and it had still been loaded, and when the sky came, the sound of time, the dust veil came to a sense. 200,000 aboard. Nobody left. Since then, the Vaughn had built no warships, claimed no territory, and made themselves into the thing the galaxy could not do without, the fleet that comes when a world ends. Their captains were taught before they could read that leaving is not cowardice. Leaving is the whole of love, made practical. So when Soon walked into the mud at the north side and met the man in charge, she was already angry in a way she could not have justified. Danny Farrow was a water engineer, 51 years old, with a sunburned neck and a brass tag hanging from a cord around it. He shook her hand, which he had read about and did not enjoy, and then he took her straight to the trench edge without offering her a chair or a drink or an explanation. 44 days till first flare, he said. Surface hits, 400 Kelvin by day 6 of the season. 90 days of that. You know all this. I know that in 44 days, everyone standing here will be ash. That's the plan we're trying to change. He pointed down into the cut, where a plasma head was chewing rock. We need 6 weeks of continuous cutting. My reactor gives me 80% of the draw I need. Your ship's core would close the gap and then some. That's the thing. I have watched species try. I have carried out the ones who tried. Farrow looked at her for a long moment, and something passed behind his eyes that she would think about for years afterward. A decision not to say something. We're not building a structure, he said. Can I get that power or not? I cannot immobilize a rescue vessel. It is the oldest law we have.
Yeah, Farrow said. I've got one of those too. The charter's man arrived on day 39.
Warrant Prefect Halvad Oro was Tavin, tall and dry and precise, and he came down with the title clerk and 8 enforcement staff and a document already signed. Soon met him at the pads because protocol required it and because she wanted to see how he handled the humans. She got her answer in 11 minutes. The colony's charter is void, Oro told Farrow, in the mud, with the trench roaring behind him. Refusal of a lawful evacuation constitutes abandonment of title. The world reverts to charter administration on the first day of the flare season. My office will manage post-season disposition. Disposition to who? That is not your concern. The Austral Combined Survey ship has been parked at the Ferd Noon for 9 days, Farrow said. That's not a guess. I've got a boy on the relay who counts things. Or did not blink. The Combine holds a conditional extraction interest. Conditional on the world being clear. Clear of what? There's 46,000 people down here. There are 11,600 people down here, Oro said. The rest are fauna. Soon heard the trench go quiet. Not all at once, in a wave, machine by machine, as the word traveled down the mine. 100 humans in the cut stopped working and looked up, and they did not shout, and that was somehow worse than shouting. Pharaoh's face did not change. Say the number again, Prefect. 11,600 registered persons. The awesome are an unlisted population. No unified government. No standatory status. No standing under the charter. Oro adjusted his cuff. I did not write the statute. I am not permitted to lift them. Neither, Captain Soon, are you. That last part was true, and Soon hated that it was true. Her manifest authority extended to charter populations. If she put a single awesome on her ship, she would be pirating a protected biosphere, said quietly. There are 34,000 awesome in the marsh. 34,600, Pharaoh said. And 40 of them are learning to weld. She had assumed the tunnel went under the town. She had assumed it because she had watched 211 species make the same shelter, and they always dug beneath their own homes, because that was where the food was, in the power, and the graves. On day 36, Soon walked the length of the survey line with the scanner and found that Pharaoh's tunnel did not go under Low Harbor at all. It ran north, away from the settlement, under the marsh. She found Pharaoh at the cutting face, filthy to the shoulders, and she did not bother with courtesy. Where does it go? Nesh, Pharaoh called, without turning around. She's figured it out. You want to tell her? The awesome came up out of the dark on 4 short limbs, shook the water off, and stood. Soon it seen them on file, small, wet-skinned, blind in the eyes and not in anything else. This one was old. Her skin was scarred pale across the back where something had once tried to eat her. There is a room under the marsh, Nesh said. Her voice came from somewhere in her throat 2 notes at once. The old people call it the Long Quiet. It is 40 of your kilometers across and it holds air. We have known it for 900 generations. We cannot open it. Why not? The roof is basalt, 11 meters. Nesh made a small gesture with one hand. We dig mud. We are very good at mud. Soon looked at the trench, at the cutting head, at the 11,000 humans hauling rock away from a hole that had never, at any point, been meant for them. Your shelter, she said to Pharaoh, the one under the town. I read your capacity filing. It, Captain. He wiped his face and left a sneer of gray across it. Long Quiet holds everybody. Us, them, all of it, with air to spare, if we get the roof open and get the scrubbers in. That's the only plan there's ever been. The town shelter is for the ones who can't work, old, sick, kids under 6. 4,000. Everybody else is out here, and if you do not finish, then 4,000 humans live and 42,000 people die, Pharaoh said. And the 4,000 will have to figure out how to be all right with that, which they won't. He picked up his cutter and went back to the face, and soon stood in the noise, and understood, finally, that she had not arrived at a rescue. She had arrived at a race, already in progress, that nobody had told her about, because nobody had thought she would help. She stayed because she could not make herself leave, and she spent 4 days learning how humans worked. And none of it made sense until it did. They ran 3 shifts, and the shifts did not have supervisors. They had a chalkboard. A person wrote their name and their hours, and the next person filled the gap. And the whole hideous machine of it ran on nothing but the fact that everyone could see the board. They ate together, standing, in 11 minutes. They argued constantly, viciously, about slope angles and pump routing. And then they did whatever the argument decided, and did not carry it forward. Every morning at first light, someone read a list. Soon asked what it was on the third morning, and a young woman told her it was the roll, the names of everyone in the colony, all 11,600, read 400 at a time, so the whole list finished every month. Why? The young woman looked at her strangely. So we know who's here. On the fourth night, Soon watched a man work 19 straight hours in a collapse-prone side gallery, come up shaking, sit down in the mud, and start singing something with a filthy chorus, and 40 exhausted people joined in on the second line. Her people would have been quiet. Her people would have been organized and dignified and quiet, and they would have gotten aboard. On day 31, Oro lifted the reactor. It was legal. The unit was charter leased, the charter was void, and his enforcement staff took it out on a heavy sled at dawn with a warrant tacked to the housing. The cutting face went dark for 9 hours. When Farrell brought it back on colony batteries, they had 30% draw and a schedule that had just slid from 6 weeks to 14. On day 29, the West Gallery came down. Soon took it. It was old, worn nearly smooth, and there was a name stamped on it, and a place, and a date, 304 years past. Alden's Wake, she read. Human colony. Second wave, out past the Fen Reach. Star went unstable, 41,000 people, and the charter came with ships and a very reasonable offer. Farrell's voice had gone flat. They boarded. Every single one. Model evacuation. They still teach it, I hear. I have taught it, Soon said. It is in the second-year manual. Then here's what the manual leaves out. The moment those people lifted off, they stopped being a colony and started being cargo. No world, no charter, no standing. Unlisted. The convoy got split at the transfer station. Temporary dispersal for processing. 9 destinations. He took the tag back and closed his hand around it. 11,000 of them made it to a place with a name. The rest went into labor contracts, indenture, medical trials. Whatever a person with no legal existence is worth. We spent 2 centuries just finding the paperwork. My great-grandmother's sister is a line item in a freight manifest, Captain.
That's the whole record of her. The night sounds of the marsh went on around them. You think we don't evacuate because we're brave, Pharaoh said. We're not.
We evacuated once, and we found out what the galaxy does with people who don't have ground under them. So we made a rule, and we've kept it for 300 years, and it costs us every time. Nobody goes until everybody can. Soon looked at the tunnel mouth, at the light strung down into it, at the small, wet shapes of awesome children hauling buckets alongside human ones. Her people had spent 900 years teaching the galaxy how to leave. These people had learned, the hard way, exactly what the galaxy did to those who did. The awesome have no standing, she said slowly. But a world with a living population in a documented settlement cannot be cleared under any statute the charter has. Now you're getting it, Farrell said. If they're alive down there in 90 days, in a place with an air plant, and a door, and a name on it, they're not fauna, they're a settlement. Oro can't strip a world out from under a settlement. He almost smiled. We're not hiding from the star, Captain. The star's just the deadline. The star came 6 days early. Ashit had never been polite about its schedule, and on day 20, it threw its first flare, and the temperature at the surface began to climb toward numbers that had no mercy in them. They were 4 meters short of breakthrough, 4 meters of basalt, and 11 hours before the air outside stopped being air, and 42,000 people spread between a half-finished tunnel and a marsh that was already beginning to steam. Farrell got on the general channel and did not raise his voice. Move everybody to the cut. All of them. Now. Farrell, Soon said, you do not have the power to finish. I know. And Soon stood on her bridge with her hand over the interlock. and thought about a ship, 900 years dead, still loading when the sky came down. The people's whole faith was one sentence. A rescue vessel leaves. It always leaves. It leaves in time, because a ship that stays becomes a tomb. And they had learned that with 200,000 bodies. She had 1,100 crew. She had a core that would never restart when she gave it away. She would be handing her ship's life to a hole in the ground and standing in the dirt with the humans. And if the long quiet failed, the Vaughn would lose a captain, a crew, a vessel, and the last 900 years of being the ones who always came back. Soon thought about a chalkboard with names on it. All hands, she said. Land us at the North Cut. Prep the core for hard transfer. They ran the coupling in 90 minutes. The cutting head came alive with a sound like the world tearing, and it went through basalt the way heat goes through fat. And at the 8th hour, it broke into open air, and the long quiet exhaled 900 generations of cold breath into the tunnel. Then came the part nobody had solved. The breach was a hole 11 meters wide into a chamber that had to hold breathable air for 90 days against a surface that was going to run at 400 Kelvin. The prefabricated door was still in a yard in Low Harbor, 40 minutes away, and 40 minutes was 2 hours too long. Farrell looked at the breach. Then he turned and looked at the second morning, sitting on the flat above the cut, dark and dead and 11 meters across the bow. He didn't ask. Soon said, "You would need her keel plates against the rim. There is one attitude thruster with residual charge. She will slide, not fly. If she comes down wrong, she seals nothing and crushes the mouth. Can you do it?" "I do not know, Captain." Farrell's voice cracked for the first time in 24 days. "There's 42,000 people in that tunnel." She flew her ship for the last 4 minutes of its life on a dying thruster and no lift, and she brought it down into the mouth of the long quiet like a stone into a jar. And the impact broke her arm against the console and threw half her bridge crew off their feet. The hole settled. The rim held. The seal was ugly and imperfect, and 11 hours later, when the surface hit 280 Kelvin, the pressure inside the chamber was steady. The last person through the gap was Nesh, who went back twice for stragglers and came out the second time carrying a human toddler on her back, because the mud was slick and the small ones were falling. They were down there for 91 days. 411 people died in the long quiet, mostly the old, mostly in the second month, when the scrubbers were failing faster than they could be rebuilt from stripped ship parts. They buried them in a side chamber and read the names, and the awesome sang over them in 2-note voices that carried a very long way in the dark, and by the 6th week, the humans had learned the song and were singing it too, badly. When the season broke, they came up through the gap beside the buried nose of a Vaughn rescue ship, into a world scoured brown and blessedly cool, and the first thing Farrell did was walk to the survey stake and file a settlement claim in 2 names. The charter's clearance order died on a technicality, which is how most enormous things die. A documented joint settlement with a continuous occupied structure cannot be declared abandoned. The Austro-combined survey ship left the third moon 9 days later, without comment. How that ore was not disgraced. He filed his report accurately, including the part about the 400 children at Tarun. And then he did something no one expected. He brought the long quiet before the standing committee as evidence that the unlisted statute was a killing machine with a stamp on it. It took him 11 years. The awesome were seated in the 9th year of that fight, and Oral was in the chamber for the vote, and he did not speak. Nesh died 4 years after the season, old and dry and satisfied, and 30,000 people came to the marsh for it, and about a third of them were human. The Vaughn tried to court-martial soon. The hearing lasted 1 day. She stood in front of 9 captains who had all been raised on the same prayer she had, And she said that she had not broken the law. She had finished it. That the fleet's whole purpose was that no one should be left. And that on Anvil, the only way to leave no one had been to stay. Then she sat down. They voted 7-2. She never captained again, because there was nothing to captain. She took a post teaching second-year evacuation doctrine, and she rewrote the chapter on Sheldon's wake. And every year she took her students to Anvil to stand at the door. The second morning is still there. They never dug her out. Someone cut a set of steps into her flank, and there's a plaque now. And every child on that world can find it in the dark. The old Vaughn blessing is on it, at the top. The way it is on every hull in the fleet. May you leave in time. Underneath, the humans added their own line, and the galaxy has been arguing about it ever since. And soon has never once been able to read it out loud without stopping halfway. Nobody goes until everybody can.